And good morning, everybody. I was very inspired by yesterday's session. And so I understood that not everybody was there yesterday. So I decided to start with a little recap of some of the things that we went through yesterday. It's also good for your learning curve. And then we will start working, you will start working on applying this to your project. Is that okay?
Okay.
I'll start sharing my screen now. Let me do it from the diavorstelling. So we discussed a little bit the history, where did the concept of RRI come from? It was one of the answers, it was unanswered, but one of the answers on the growing gap between academia, what the research and innovation in the established institutions on the one hand, and the needs and values of society on the other hand. Like academia was following its own path in curiosity-driven specialist research, whereas society was facing urgent, complex issues, and also evolving in values. And there was a growing distrust against research and innovation. And many alternative initiatives emerged, like citizen science, people to try to fill that gap again, or to bridge that gap again. And RRI is one of the concepts that is promoted by the European Commission, Research and DG Research and Innovation. It was first Science and Society in Framework Program 6, then was Science in Society, then it became Science with and for Society. And that, to summarize that, it was called Responsible Research and Innovation. But then immediately we saw the complexity of trying to summarize such a complex problematic, a systemic problematic in one concept, because at the core of RRI is to reconnect, the way that science was organized did not respond to the wishes and the needs of society. So even, research and innovation, the way it was organized in a discipline-based way, in a specialist way, would create outcomes that were not foreseen. It's called anomalies. Thomas Kuhn calls it anomalies. Like, for example, nobody intended the climate change or the antibiotics crisis, but research and innovation have played a very big role in bringing that crisis about. So RRI is to rethink research and innovation, to reflect, somebody said it yesterday, reflexivity on where did we go wrong? Where did we miss? Where did we have, miss something, blind spots? Where was our compass a little bit off, so that we lost track of the complex issues of today? And that is the core of our RRI. And if you think that through in all its dimensions, you will come to the conclusion that it means that, instead of research being in its ivory tower and organized hierarchically and patriarchally without, society having control over it, it means redefining governance. The community governs research and innovation, in which academia is one of the partners. It's agenda, ethics. What kind of society do we want? The Sustainable Development Goals. How can research contribute to that rather than following its own agenda? So education means that the research system itself will have to re-educate itself, will have to learn how to adapt its paradigm. So these are, an open access means we're all going to have to create knowledge together in an open and transparent way, so that everybody knows what's going on. And by sharing knowledge, your knowledge grows, rather than if you privatize it, it's just for your own interest, your own financial interest, and it's not going to contribute to the big solutions or the big challenges of today. And maybe for those who were not there, I have one other story that I really show, that I really think shows it really well. There was a couple of years ago, and it shows the complexity of that, because everybody wants to say, hey, I'm not an irresponsible researcher. I do responsible research. I do something for a better society, because they don't understand that at a deep level, it's about this co-creation and about this complexity and non-linearity, because they're all been educated in linear, linear, one-dimensional, one discipline, one specialism, and this co-creation, complexity, looking at different dimensions of a problem is new. That is what RRI is about. So there was a researcher. She was a woman. She was a specialist in genetic modifications, and she came up with a solution. There's many people who are allergic to cow's milk, and so she decided that with her research she wanted to find a solution to that problem. And her solution was to do to have a cow that she manipulated genetically, a genetic manipulation of a cow with a human gene, with the result that the cow's milk of that cow resembled more mother's milk, human mother milk. And so indeed the results were fantastic. The people, had no allergic, the people who were allergic to cow's milk had no allergic reaction to that milk. And then society and the NGOs and the consumers said, whoa, we don't want that milk. A cow genetically manipulated with a human, these are ethics, the boundaries between how far you can go in manipulating life, And so this researcher was like totally angry. And she said, because of those stupid consumers and NGOs, all this expensive research is now not being implemented, and it's a waste of money. So that's where I think she thought she was contributing to society, but she had underestimated the complexity of society. It's not just a genetic, material, biophysical problem. It's also a problem of values and of consumers, of economics, etc. So what she should have done, or what would RRI do, she would have to have a team for that, is to say, what is the goal? The goal is health for everybody, right? Or maybe access to protein-rich food for everybody. And then you start unraveling, why do we not get there today? Why do people not have access to enough proteins in their food? Maybe it's because the food is too industrialized and processed, or maybe it's because the vegetarian alternatives, protein-rich alternatives, are not available in the restaurants and the shops. So you could plan all, unravel all the mechanisms, like we did yesterday with the antibiotics. Like, why can't we do that? And then you might come up with, one of the factors might be like, wow, what we lack is a genetically manipulated cow. You never know that somebody came up. And then people could say like, yeah, that's what we need. And then the researcher could go and do her research, and she would be sure it would be taken up, because the agenda would be set, the demand would be formulated by the community. But if the community says, no, we can find other solutions for that problem because this solution is against our values, then she would not have spent that money. She's the one who wants, who squandered the money. Okay, so this is where you start from a different framing. And then, and she was probably, she was saying, hey, I'm a woman, so the gender check is okay. And I did ethics because I solved the societal problem, and engagement because I asked those people who are allergic. So this is where we made the difference between superficial RRI, you do it from an old vision of science, a specialist vision of science, and the scientist who first decides, I know what is the solution, and then the other dimensions come later, as, deep or strong RRI, where you start from framing your problem differently. And so I tried to sort of like summarize it here. It's not that you need to know that by heart. These are just concepts that the Commission proposes as a delineation of what RRI is, and it is often used in a very superficial way. And the reason why we explored it a little bit is I wanted you to be able to look at that critically and to understand at a deeper level, if RRI is just greenwashing the old stuff and just, making it seem more acceptable and responsible, rather than are we really challenging the old assumptions of the established research and innovation to move towards the next paradigm that is more in line with the current needs of society. So it's, we called it the canonized system. So I adapted my vocabulary. So you first have your researcher, who's curiosity driven, said, I want to find my solution. And then you put your ethical or societal questions afterwards, add on, we can count the women, we can explain it to citizens, We can do a policy brief so that, you know, people, the governors know what to do, you know, as they do, as I tell them. Ethics is often reduced to, we're not going to cheat with our research data. We're going to be honest researchers. Engagement is often like citizen science will be like, we will ask the citizens to collect the data for us. It's cheaper than if we have to collect them ourselves. And open access would be like a gold standard publication. Whereas if you go to a framing of RRI, you know, at the core of the figure, you will look at first at questioning yourself as researcher. What did we miss so far? What did the anomalies come from? The unexpected results. So you're responsive to the paradigm or the canonized system, responsive to the errors that you make. You're learning from the errors that you made, or from the unexpected outcomes, the anomalies. And then also, you know, the core is the societal challenge or the ethical challenge. What kind of world, what kind of society do we want? And there yesterday, we also referred to the SDGs. Now, mind you, SDGs can also be used in a very superficial way. So again, you have to look at SDGs with an RRI perspective. And then only you will put the pieces of the puzzle. What kind of knowledge or expertise do we need to build that world? And under what conditions can it really contribute? Do we need an antibiotic? And then under what conditions will that antibiotic really contribute to the goal? And under what conditions could it be the next risk? And then you have, you know, then we have, your 6 criteria will be like very much more stronger. Like they're always the same way of saying the same thing. It's going to be, you know, gender from just competing with each other, you know, specialists that want to be come out as the winning expert. You're going to cooperate, you're going to work together. So that is where the gender roles come in, you know, from competition to collaboration, and from extracting nature, you know, even extracting more from that cow or extracting something better from that cow, towards caring for the planet and caring for the future generations. And so these two have to be in balance. It's not competition against those two, it's balance, you know, gender balance. And then education is learning society, including the learning of our research and innovation system and research and innovation policies that need to unlearn the old system and relearn the new one. Governance is about, you know, who sets the agenda, who governs this learning process, who sets the agenda, who follows up on are we really making progress? It's not government. Government could be one of the actors in the governance, but governance is a process. And again, you can make a system map. Are scientists allowed or able to govern themselves? You know, and should we also have like a more ascendant governance mechanisms, and maybe also bottom-up governance system? So that again is a much more systemic approach, you know, than just saying, hey, here's the truth, and now I write a letter to the government to telling them what to do. Engagement, you know, means that you are really committed to contribute your piece of knowledge to your piece of expertise to that globe, that common agenda, societal agenda. And then open science mean that we make progress just by sharing knowledge rather than privatizing and commodifying it. So that's a little bit the recap of what we did yesterday. And then what we also did when we did the analysis of you did the analysis of the antibiotics problem. There were many different factors. You know, we explored how come a very good invention, a very advanced invention with 95% of success in the laboratory turned out a huge disaster when rolled out at a larger scale. And there were, we came up with 3 different types of elements, of factors that worked together in non-linear ways to produce an outcome that was not foreseen. Non-linear co-evolution. And the one was the biophysical aspect. You have a bacteria on the one side that you can control, but you also have water cycles that you don't control. You know, if your patient, or your cows or your chickens, they take antibiotics, you know, when they urinate, you cannot control that. You cannot capture all the urine, so you cannot even leak, you cannot control that it leaks in the groundwater. We have entropy here. Entropy means leaking of the systems. You know, you get corrosion, you get rust, you get things are wearing out, things are leaking. You know, you can't control that because our planet is not a vacuum system. You know, it's always entropy. You know, if you put your cube of sugar in the coffee, it will dissipate. If you put your coal, you burn it, it will dissipate. So that is entropy. And then autocatalysis is the process of restructuring order, remaking things. So those are a little bit, you know, new. For example, you know, if you have enough interaction between antibiotics and bacteria, something new could emerge, like a mutation of the bacteria. So, you know, these are entropy and autocatalysis, or like the laws of thermodynamics, if you like. We can't control that. Scientists can't control that. It just happens, okay? And we think that if we control one thing here, like you know, we can control the life and death of one bacteria. All these other things we do not control. And so something happens autocatalytic and you get into something non-linear. And that is the big difference between traditional knowledge, where we thought we could control by splitting up reality like in a mechanistic way. And we did control it to a large extent. As long as the planet had large buffers, you know, we could do things on small scale and not see the externalities, not ask, you know, where what happens to the antibiotics when you urinate. If you do that only with 10 patients, it's not going to affect the system. If you do it worldwide on an industrial scale, you will start seeing interactions, okay? So the other thing was the values. You know, people are addicted to, or, you know, people have a psychological expectations to get a quick fix from the doctor, or, you know, they can't, we don't want to suffer from disease. We want to control diseases, you know. How are we organized in our communities? Do we support people who are ill, or do we call that a cost? You know, do we support, you know, can we work with the aging of the population, or do we consider that a problem and a cost? And then, of course, there's the whole area of economic and technological infrastructures. You know, we were talking about the way the health system is organized, you know, doctors who are educated in a certain way. And we have the pharma, the business models of the pharma. We have the money system that plays a role. And so, and that also has to do with the human brain. Somebody remarked in the chat that it was about, you know, this distinguishing yin and yang. The human brain you know, this is so complex and so chaotic that if we would have that come into our brain unfiltered, we would go mad, okay? We would go stark mad. So that is why we need all this. We need narratives to say what is important, what are, you know, how can we filter what helps, what gives us a meaningful life. And that is different in Western cultures than, for example, in indigenous peoples that live in Amazonia. You know, they have different, but again, you know, we have to filter what is meaningful and what is not. And those three together, we did not go in that depth, but, you know, of course, combined also with how many people there are on the planet. You know, the more people there are, you know, the more pressure that it will create here, because we all need, you know, the power of the planet or of the life system on Earth to regenerate. So this is, you know, this is a little bit, it's an enriched synthesis of the ideas that you came up yesterday. You know, there's some values and narratives in society about health, about, you know, there's the biophysical reality, and this is not nature. I'm not talking about, you know, there is nature and on the right is people, because it's also our bodies. You know, we are part of the cycles of life and death. Thank God. You know, imagine if the worms would say we refuse to eat human bodies from now on, we would really be in trouble, right? We're part of this. If our body is 70% water, so if the water gets polluted, we get polluted, right? So, and then you know, the technologies and you know, the means of access of allocation. How do we access all these biophysical and human, you know, we call them resources, the offerings of nature, to achieve what we call a meaningful life? You know, those three spheres together interact, and, you know, you could say the green ones, the biophysical health, is now studied mainly by natural sciences, whereas making sense of life and death is more I guess, humanities, and then the economic and technological ones are more the social sciences and the engineering, you know, the applied sciences. So we have split it up in 3 different types of specialisms, and these specialists don't know how to talk with each other. And so you know, and that's why, you know, they think they do something for the whole of society, but they have blind spots. And so from their perspective, they aim towards a certain outcome, and then these other things start to interfere, and all of a sudden the outcome is somewhere else. So responsible research and innovation means that you start from zooming out and watching, you know, being aware of those 3 spheres before you start analyzing your problem. You know, we know what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a sustainable life on this planet, hopefully. Because if we can't survive here, how will we ever survive in a different planet, you know, that maybe, you know, where the conditions might even be harsher. So that is the goal. We want to survive here. You know, many people say we're concerned about health and about sustainability, but they lack the systemic lens, the RRI lens, okay? So we start from zooming out and seeing the bigger picture, then we define where we want to get, and then we can make a much more accurate analysis of all the factors, all the pieces of the puzzle that need to work together to probably, you know, go in the good direction. Okay, so this is also kind of like what we came up in some of the examples yesterday, but I have synthesized it for you here. So strong RRI, again, synthesis, it means learning from the anomalies of the current system. You know, the current problems are nonlinear, multifaceted, very complex. So canonized science is not built for that. So science need to, you know, move up the next level of excellence means tackling complexity, and nonlinear complexity means, you know, working together across many sources of knowledge. Anomalies also reveal the errors in RRI framing, you know, and then the examples that we discussed, you know, antibiotics were designed for more health, and then antibiotics turned out to be a health risk. That's where we know, like, oh, there was something wrong in our compass, you know, our framing was too narrow, so that we did not anticipate this totally different outcome. And the second example that was raised by the group was that there was a project working on women's rights, you know, in hoping to emancipate the women, and the outcome was an increase in the abuse of those very same women. So that you could also call an anomaly, something that you did not foresee or you did not plan. And that means, okay, we need to zoom out. What did we miss? How did we define our goal too narrowly? Or did we not take into account actors that could afterwards influence the outcome and that we had not involved in the design of the research? Did we frame, you know, did we frame our problem as something that everybody could support, or did we frame it for a narrow group and then exclude the group who might feel threatened by that or feel excluded from that, and then you get a rebound effect afterwards? So it's about, you know, in the antibiotics, you'd have to, you know, you have to include, if your goal is to increase health, you know, then you have to first sit together with economy, politics, psychology, mutations, etc. And then you can say, okay, under what conditions can antibiotics be helpful, or maybe not be helpful, or be, you know, even be a problem? And same with women's rights, you know, if we can redefine it in a way that it's sort of like if you define it in a way, you know, it's women's rights against men's rights, you're actually entering the framing of, you know, competition. It's gender to a certain extent, but you have to zoom out. And could we redefine the problem so that men will contribute to it? Men will feel it's also in their interest to you know, contribute to the emancipation of women. And so then you could, you know, you reframe your research so that it can be shared by all. You know, all the actors who influence it have to share your goal, and then, you know, include all those actors in your research. And I think you could put the 6 you know, the 6 parameters, you know, engagement, gender, ethics, you know, you could put them on here, but I think it's more interesting to understand the story than to just have the 6 concepts, because, you know, you could put those 6 concepts on very superficial stories as well. So that's why also you you know, I focused more on the examples that we discussed yesterday. I'm a believer in storytelling. And so another way, you know, we could summarize that is what is very helpful is a framework that comes from what is it called? Process ecology. It's a field of study that has studied many sustainable systems, both natural and technical systems. And what they found is that sustainable systems are the ones that are able to adapt to a changing context, right? We are now in a different society than 1 century ago. We are running against the limits of the climate system, you know, soils erosion, etc. So we need to adapt. And so the most sustainable systems are the ones who have a large capacity to adapt. And that capacity to adapt and to adapt constantly again and again, you know, during the time. Sustainable means during the time, during a long time, in a sustained way. It depends on 2 characteristics, and one is ascendancy, the other one is resilience. And interestingly, they are opposites. They are opposite characteristics. Resilience depends on the capacity to create totally alternative pathways, you know, just in case, you know. And ascendancy is your capacity to streamline the pathways, to do the same, you know, to be more efficient, if you like, to have, you know, not to waste your energy and dissipate your energy in all possible senses, but to work together in the same sense. But if you work together in the same sense, you know, like the whole economic system or the whole financial system is very, very ascendant, very, you know, you can do financial transactions across the whole world with one and the same regime, but it's very low on the sustainability curve. You know, it's like a monoculture. The more ascendant, the more streamlined you are, you know, you eliminate all the alternatives, you know, you consider them, you know, troubleshooters. You're going down on the sustainability curve. Look at the 2008 crisis. You know, the money system was so streamlined that we had no alternative to fall back on. And so the government had no other option than to re-establish the problem, the system that had caused the problem. So we have not really addressed that. But what you also see is that, you know, people and institutions are saying, hey, let's just step out of that system and create our own alternatives. And that is the real resilience. We often call that social innovation because economy, you know, is so, how do you call it, canonized in this growth-oriented paradigm, that people who say, hey, we're not growth-oriented, our goal is to create a benefit for society and you know, and with respect for the planet, we call that social innovation. It's also a way to marginalize that. So it means that if you're gonna do RRI, it's very important the way you define your goal, you know, and the way you define your goal will always be not in things. You're not gonna say, I want to produce an antibiotic, or I want to produce an electric car. It will be, I want to contribute to health, or I want to contribute to a better mobility, you know, and mobility is bridging the gap or the distance between where people are and where the things that they need are, you know, the things they desire. Do we need to travel across the globe to relax for holidays, or can we bridge that gap in different ways? And if we have to travel there, can we do that in a sustainable way? So your goal has to really be a function, and there, you know, a function, or a societal function. We want to contribute to the capacity of all people to have access to what they need, or to have a healthy life, or, you know, and use you can use the SDGs as a global framework for that. And then very crucial, you have to look at you know, who are the people, who is everybody who shares that goal. You have people who share the goal. If you have oil companies that say we don't share that goal, then you don't invite them around the table. You can keep them informed, but they have a different goal, so they cannot contribute to your goal. It makes no sense. You're going to undermine your own goal. So you sit together with people, you know, who are the niches, like the NGO that supports women's rights. They are, you know, they are trying to correct the system, do something different from the system. But you also have to include the people, you know, who now control that system. And if you can find a goal that they also share, you might together go there. So that is a little bit, you know, how we, here you see again the 3 spheres. You know, we want to achieve by working together, co-RRI, you know, partnerships in a peaceful way, you know, not in a competitive way, work together, co-create, co-evolve together to achieve what we call, you know, the ethical values and the quality life for all people in the world, while restoring the balance of, you know, the biophysical ecosystems and the biophysical health, you know. And if the ecosystem is ill, then our health is also threatened. And then to do that, we are going to have to redefine, redesign a lot of our systems, you know. How do we define growth? How do we do innovation? You know, I think RRI is a crucial one here. How do we organize our cities? How do we consume? How do we all consume, or do we share things? So this is, again, you know, how you have to build those three together. And you cannot say, well, I'm just, you know, I'm a specialist in SDG 8. I will focus on growth. I know nothing about societal goals. I know nothing about ecological aims. You're not going to be responsible. You're going to create the next anomaly. Okay, so that, I think, is a little bit an overview or a synthesis of, you know, you brought up the SDGs, you brought up the different kinds of processes, you know, the how do we make sense of things, you know, the narratives about the values, the narratives, the ecophysical, the biophysical health, and then the economic and financial health. So with that, let me see. I would now like you to, I will stop sharing. Maybe take a little bit of time to, you know, I'll give you a couple of minutes to reflect. Take your time. You know, I've sort of recapped, but I also synthesize it more broadly. Think on your current project, the current project that you're in, and I would like you, each one for yourself, to think about 2 minutes. In what sense, in your opinion, in your words, is this project already a good RRR project? You know, it's appreciative inquiry. What is there in our project that you think really puts you on the path for sustainability? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then I would like everyone to put a couple of words, not full sentences, not a full paragraph, but put it in the chat. Don't say, in my opinion, our project is because, but say gender is, or is at the core, you know, say it very short so that we can see all the answers. Is that clear? And
would it be okay if instead of writing, can we explain with talking? I would feel more comfortable the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want you to you can also use a little, you know, a little piece of paper. I give you 1 minute, because I don't want to go to either. 1 minute, what is for you the most important, you know, if you think of RRI and this project, why do you think, yes, we're on the good track? You have 1 minute to say we're good because, okay? And then just put that word in the chat, and then we will talk about it more broadly, okay? The minute goes now. Okay, I want to see your chats. Put down your words. Your minute is over.
I would like to explain that.
Yeah, sure. That's what we're going to do, as I told you. Okay, I see interesting. So we have Marta, Luisa, Ruben, Thijs. We should see. $14 or 12 answers. Okay, Edgardo.
I by mistakenly wrote somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, make sure you reply to everyone. Address your chat to everyone. Right space needs by. Okay, very good. Okay, come on. 5 more seconds to put your words in. I want to see them popping up. There's a person waiting in the waiting room. So did you all, everybody has their answers or their IDs, or I assume that if you did not answer, it doesn't mean that you totally don't believe that the current project has any RRI characteristics, right? I don't know. I'm a bit frustrated with this with working online, because I can't see people's faces. I don't have any feedback from your from your Are you thinking, my God, what is she thinking? Or are you saying like, I'm afraid to say, or
And
okay.
can I comment on that? For example, when we are looking at your face, we are missing the camera. When we are looking the camera, we are missing your face. So there's a dilemma.
Yeah, but I don't need to, I know I'm not looking in my camera all the time, but at least, somewhere, as if you're sitting in a cafe, you're not watching each other's eyes all the time, but at least you can, see people's physical reaction. So, okay, let's stop it here. I would like everybody everybody one by one to say why, or, somebody starts. I think Nessie wanted to really start. Why do you think this project is in line with RRI? And then the next question will be, so we're going to do this a little bit short, 10 minutes, exchange quickly. And then the next question will be, what are the concerns? Where do we think, oh, I'm not sure because, or I'm worried about, I saw some people already did that. It's not the question, but we'll keep that later. So the first is what's good for now? What is good? Okay, Nessie, say something good about the project.
I think one thing very positive is I just realized, maybe that could be the one way of thinking, that we all have work packages that we are responsible for, and each individual partner has their special work package. So we are all using the socio-economic and ecological approaches. So then I wondered why we do not relate each work package with corresponding SDGs. How do they relate themselves?
That is the second question. We'll come back to that later. I first want to know now, we're good because, or there's a good potential because we already do this. And then the next is, why don't we do more? That we'll talk that in 10 minutes. Okay, Dennis?
So the first point was actually we were benefiting from those criteria already.
Yeah, okay, so you have a social and an ecological focus, and you have a big team of people already working together in different work packages, but with a global, yeah, that's very RRI, that's really, you have the three spheres around the table, social, economy, ecology, and then you have the dynamics to make sure it co-creates something responsible. Who's next? Dennis, I'll just call your names if you don't volunteer. Sorry.
Hello, I am Dennis. Yes, you are right. The project is why this project is very important. In our side, this is our work package is related with methodology in the project, and so we understand all other project packages and generate and evaluate the available methodology to all package responsible sites. So
so what is good in the methodology so far? What makes your methodology close to responsible research or connected to responsible?
So we went to site of our project people. These are, for example, refugees and other side, and we pick data some from that, and this data is understood by other collect and try to practice to some questions and questionnaire. We prepared a questionnaire to understand what they feel, what is their situation, what is your problems, and we are trying to collect this their problems and etc. So
okay.
So
if I understand it right, you're collecting data, but you're allowing people, you're avoiding that you're looking at the problem with one lens and you have many people bringing in their different lenses.
Yes.
But to clarify the problem, that would indeed.
Yes, exactly right.
Responsive and responsive. Very good. You can also, if you say I agree with Nessin or Nessie or with Dennis, Okay, Luisa.
Yes, thank you. I was. Pardon?
Just what is your one word? We are RRI because
we pursue societal functions, and we are more driven towards outcomes and not specific outputs. So we are not yearning to achieve the perfect product, but through services we want to increase inclusion. That we are looking for a wider goal and not a narrow one, while we definitely relate to our specific contexts. And I guess this is also a good RRI point, that we are not strict that we all have to follow the same strategy, but that we attention real needs of real people in real contexts.
Yes.
So this variety, I guess, is beneficial for who is the beneficiary and for us that try to deliver.
Okay, thank you very much. I think very, very, very important one, that your focus is on the process, having impact, changing things rather than on a product. And that is sometimes a difficult one with the European Commission, because they want you to predefine what your impact will be, which is un-RRI. You cannot. I mean, co-evolution is not you're going to steer it, and if you're going to kick a stone, you can calibrate where you're going. You can calculate where your stone is going to end. But if you kick a dog, you cannot you know, and a dog is just slightly more complex than a stone. But if you're gonna kick society, there is no way you're gonna know. So it's more important, you know, that was the curve also, to define your horizon. Where do we want to go? Human rights, sustainable development, you know, but how do we define that? And there you have your curve. We have the dominant definition, you know, the Western dominant definition, neoliberal ideas about what development means, but we also have local contexts where, you know, where people might have a different definition. And just because you are combining those different perspectives, you might go in the right direction in a more reflexive, responsive, responsible, sustainable way. Very good one. Focus on process. Okay, Thijs.
Hello, good morning. My words are gender, mobilities and immobilities in Brazil. And I think it's important because it's to reflect about the possibilities and the difference between the gender to access many kinds of mobilities. And in terms of methodology, I'm using a multifacetted ethnography that it's interesting because I'm investigating not just people, but also narratives and technologies involved. So I'm trying to understand all the process with different actors.
Yes, and I think, you know, gender in a country like Brazil with a very patriarchal president, you're gonna have on how can we define the process so that we can all move, you know, mobility is moving together in that direction. Yes, very good. And so you trust that this current project creates the conditions for you to move in that direction. Okay, you have a good feeling about it right now. Okay, thank you. Marta. You can just be, please be.
Yeah, I could have
in short, I mean, what do you have thing, or do you just approve? Because otherwise we will have not enough time to look into.
I could have many points, but I just tell one very concrete point about gender, what we have in Finnish project. So in Finland, most of the asylum seekers are men, and consequently there is almost no research concerning asylum seeker women. So in our project, we are involving women as well. And one of our two cases is about developing childcare services in reception centers.
Okay.
Of course, so that's of course like interest of whole families, but often women are still more responsible for care of children.
It's in the interest.
So that's one very concrete point. Fast.
It's gender because it looks at the caring relationship, and it's including because it's defined in a way that also the men feel it is in their interest.
Yeah, and actually, if I could fast add that.
Sorry, Martina.
Okay, fine.
Have difficulties. So Martina, please, in 2 words. Or Martina, are you? You have your own.
No, well,
we do not have an Haru as such, so we're just managing the training. So I don't have an answer to your question right now.
Emilia, please, your 1 or 2 words. I mean, otherwise we'll have not enough time.
sorry, Anna.
Yeah.
The 3 of us from UNIMED. That's myself, Emilia, and Martina.
Okay, Edgardo then.
We are in the same position. We are lucky because we don't have to implement an Naru. Okay.
Okay. So Edgardo, can I ask Edgardo?
Yes, hello. For me, the most important is always to meet the balance between the private interest and the public interest. The dilemma always is what is the most important in the research, the money or the personal issues, the human issues.
Okay, but why is this project, in your eyes, why is it connected to the RRI principles as we discussed them yesterday and as I recapped them this morning?
Okay, the human right focus, because it's a refugee person in Spain.
Okay, so it's about ethics, it's about, you know, okay, very good one. And then who else do we not have? Tariq? Can you unmute yourself, Tariq?
My connection is very bad.
Okay, say it then. This project
I cannot hear very well.
Okay, you can put it in the chat. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, and then Ruben. Ruben is I think the last one.
I think so.
Okay.
Well, there are several aspects because I mean there are several reasons for the project to be RRI. I think that one is the definition of a general overall goal that is related to society. Okay, that is improving, in our case, the attention and inclusion of vulnerable groups, in this case, refugees. There is also an attention to the process. I mean, we didn't predefine, I mean, the actual result that we want, okay, but we consider that there was a general goal that was, okay, from what we have gathered, the information that we have elicited, we need something that is more adjusted, some strategies that are more adjusted to particular context, okay? And the process of defining those strategies is something that we are building together, okay, with the different stakeholders. We have involved the target publics, in this case, refugees, host communities, administration, and so on. So we are trying to create together, okay, for each particular case, the kind of strategy that can work there. So it's the general objective, is the process, and is the co-definition of what is important in that process, what are the important outcomes, and what are the acceptable processes to define those strategies.
Okay, excellent.
And to make it, yeah, of course.
So I think, you know, you have a good start. You are focusing on a process, being responsive, responding to different perspectives, private and public, responding to different positions, the different contexts, localized context. So that is, and the goal is, you know, a better ethical situation in a society with a large group of people with migrant backgrounds or refugees, or, you know, that is, and then, you know, a lot of the engagement of many stakeholders, looking at different perspectives. So very good. Would you like a 5-minute break before we zoom into the problems? Get a cup of tea, stretch a bit, because we're behind the computer for an hour now. Raise your thumb if you want 5-minute break. No, you want to go on? Okay.
They are so engaged.
Okay.
But if you need 5 minutes,
no,
tell us.
I will tell you. I will just sort of like, no.
Thanks.
Okay. Now, you know, we have the last half hour or whatever, you know, time we need to sort of like explore the concerns that you have. Like, where do you still feel uncertain? Where would you, you know, how could you're going to do the testing of your tailored attention and inclusion strategies, and you want to make sure that you do that in a responsive way, where you can say, yeah, well, we're gender aware, we're caring and cooperative, we're inclusive, we're engaging people. You know, you can use the parameters, but how can you make sure that what you do in those already three, it's an iterative testing, so the process is there, and you're not saying at the third one we will have found the truth, but we will have understood the process, right? We will know how we can constantly remain responsive and adapting our solution or strategies with the local people to the local context. But so what are your concerns? What do you think, like, oh my God, if I'm going to have to do that in Brazil or whatever, you know, in Turkey, I'm not sure that I will manage to remain responsive, and that I'm not going to be pushed again in some, you know, output oriented or blind, gender blind or whatever. So would you like some time to reflect first, or can we just go on with, you know, some of the concerns were already voiced by some people? Shall we start there? Or maybe I'll just give you 1 minute. What is your main, if you have 1 minute to ask me a question, what would it be? You don't have to write it down, but just take some time to zoom with yourself. Okay, So meanwhile, I have Tariq's answer, you know, why he thinks that the current project is responsive. It's making healthcare programs and education better to support them. Support that, you know, that is mainly focusing on your goal, right? The ethics of your goal is supporting the migrant or the refugee people. And then you're looking at different dimensions, being both healthcare and education, which makes, you know, you're already looking at from different angles and being responsive to how these might interact. So thank you, Tariq. Sorry, you know, for the technical problems. But okay, let's focus on the question. Who has a burning question? Who has a burning, you know, issue that you're like, oh, I'm worried about if I'm going to go back to my work package and do the test, the ties, and test the strategies. How can I be sure that I will do it in a responsible and an RRI way? There was, I think, was it Dennis who already said, I wonder why we do not.
No, sorry.
Okay, Luisa, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know if it's what you are asking us for, but I was connecting to what you, by the end of yesterday's session, said about the minister goes, I mean, you as a bridging agent between the minister and the women, you switched the viewpoint from we have a problem with you or the minister is a problem. Now, focusing on the ties, the inclusion strategy we are implementing now here in Palermo. So from the action research, we have evidence that we have a lot of female migrant population compared to what is the case in Finland, as we heard from Marta. The statistics show us that women migrants attend to a 10% inclusion programs compared to the male population. And in real life, when we offer now an inclusion program for women, we have big difficulties in recruiting participants. So if evidence says you have a wide female migrant population, the research shows that they are less attentioned and they are less included. We create an adapted recruitment strategy for the specific target profile, and then we have big problems in finding women available to join. Then we try to make it as flexible as possible and to let you choose what you want to learn. This is the Italian ties, to change from an induced educational approach to a selective one. But still, the minister has a problem, let's say. Back to the...
Okay, it's a very good one. So does anybody have an idea how this could be reframed, how you could zoom out and reframe it? If you would be sitting in the cafe with Luisa, what would you tell her? Oh, Luisa, when I hear you, you could, you know.
Maybe there is an issue. I mean, maybe because, I mean, that's a problem that is also appearing here in Spain, okay? And sometimes the problem is that it is true that it's a target public that, I mean, the kind of service that we are proposing could be useful for them. But there are many other issues around that population. Okay, for instance, in our case is that just for instance they have small babies, so they cannot go. I mean, they cannot assist to our service. There is also a conflict, a trade-off between okay, we have to work. I mean, for the everyday living, but we also want to go to the service. But the priority is the everyday living. Okay. So sometimes it is true that maybe it's very difficult for us, okay, because we have limited resources, but we need to take a look at those those, I mean, the conditions that are around, okay, that are the limiting factors that preclude them to pay the
yeah, very good one,
attention to what we are offering, and that I mean, they need more resources in order to be able to carry out the actual integration. Okay, when you are concerned about eating, you cannot be aware of, okay, I need training.
Yes, very good one. So what
may I just say in one sentence? This is, of course, Ruben, the first answer. Yes, but in these 2 hours, I can do even a black job, but I get my 15 euro, 10 I send back to my home country, and with 5, I eat a snack during the day. But this is even stakeholders, when we ask them, how would you suggest us to involve them? They all the time tell you the same, but they need money.
Okay.
But if we take this as granted, all educational services could stop because we cannot give them.
I want to interrupt the discussion because you're defending your problem, and we should not be defending the problem. We should be looking for the solution. So what Ruben is saying is that there is an interference from, well, there's 2 things that I would like to give you as a feedback. I'm an outsider. I'm not your advisory board, but let me do it. But the way you already framed it to me was not always responsive. You're talking about the target public. You're not talking about the co-experts, the target public, the inclusion program. We have defined a program and we want to include you. Okay, it's a different story. It's a different story. And the service we propose and will want to be flexible. You can choose what it reminds me when I had to put my children to bed and they didn't want to go. I said, you can choose if mommy or daddy will bring you to bed. You know, that was the choice I gave. I was very flexible, but not about you're going to bed. Or what pajamas would you like to wear? You know, that was my way of including them in my decision, but it was my decision, right? So that is where you have not zoomed out far enough and said, like, what is the goal that we pursue? Is the goal to increase their participation in our training? You're already talking about a thing, an object, something that you can count, okay? If the goal is opening processes that for them to, you know, to participate more fully and in a more educated way in society, you're going to have to, you know, like Ruben is saying, look into all those things together and really find it in such a way that these things are now competing with each other. It's either education or economics. And you can find ways to integrate that. You know, you can say, if you join the course that we're organizing, thank you so much, because we, you know, you're making us feel good. You know, we achieve our results thanks to you, so we will reward you for it. And you can do that. You know, we're talking about money, but money is a way to valorize the value that is created. In this case, participating or learning some, you know, creating learning context is a value. So you could say everybody who participates will receive a token. And with the token, we can give you access to something that is valuable to them. It could be food, or it could be, you know, or it could be train tickets, or it could be a course in something, or something for the kids, you know, a childcare, and then you sit together with them and say, like, and also with your men, like, what is important for you and how can we help you to get there? And for sure, education will be part of that. And yes, we're all in the tangles of the money system. You know, it's so scarce. The money is so scarce that we're all in fierce battles, and everything is under. But to create pathways where they understand that joining you would create, you know, you're not going to pay them in euros maybe, but you might pay them in something that helps them to save euros, but that is what you will have to co-create. What is the offer? How do you define a horizon where they all want to go? Where do they want to go? And then how can you co-create, you know, where do they find that already? How can you mutualize that? How can you build bridges so that they're not fighting that battle on their own, but they can, you know, work that together? Yeah, it's not very, I know it's not very, but this is an example where you are framing your problem already, and this is what I want to achieve, and I want you to achieve, you know, I want you to do what I say, rather than where is our common goal, you know. And the minister was already also saying, you know, I want the women to come to my services. And then we asked the women, you know, how do you, what would be help for you? And then they always say, what we want is a community around ourselves. And then we could build a bridge and tell the minister, rather than individual services, create, you know, support for those groups. And then all of a sudden it went boom. Okay, is that helpful? So don't, you know, say, yes, sure, you could sum up all the obstacles, but you're gonna have to, from those obstacles, zoom out and say, how can we define, you know, at the curve, the apex of your curve, how could we define something that they all agree that they want to go there, you know? And we said, we want you to help to solve the problem of the minister. They were like, we don't care about the minister's problem. This is, you know, it's more like, you know, there is a concern that, you know, the minister does not know how you could, you know, how he could support you. It was the real issue was, of course, you know, we know that, you know, we want to offer support to you and we have no idea how to do that. So could you please help us to understand how we can support you? You know, we are learning from you how to support you, and not we have defined a way to support you and now we want you to accept our. I'm being a little bit schematic here, okay? It's always more nuanced, but okay. Next concern. Was it Dennis who also said, why don't we do more of something?
Exactly. I don't want to explain this time. Sorry.
Okay.
Later.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
So who else has a concern?
For me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
For me, it's a bit different because I'm talking about my PhD project, but it's a good activity to zoom out the problem, to see the many sectors that are related and involved. So I'm investigating some women groups, and when I zoom out, I can realize that they're not just a problem of gender, but also race. There are many racial issues, class, and many kinds of problems that are involved. And to think about a unique target, I think it would be a more equality society in terms of mobility. That's that everyone could access many kinds of technologies and possibilities to travel or migration.
Sorry, when you talk about mobility, you're talking about traveling, right? You're not talking about, okay, very good one.
Yeah, it's mobility that people want, not that are forced to.
Well, yeah, just a little story about the city of Ghent, where there was a very multicultural and marginalized neighborhood, 2 huge buildings called the Towers, you know, these classical 1970s buildings with all apartments, like, you know, like a birdcage almost, no common spaces where you could meet except for maybe the elevator. I mean, you know, it was this classical, and then, you know, people from very different backgrounds, and there were Greeks and Bulgarians that hated each other, whatever it was, Turkish, you know, people didn't talk to each other. And so there were a lot of problems. You know, people would drop their garbage over the balcony because they had no money to pay for the, you know, as soon as the trash bags were paying, you know. And then the city had to put money to clean that up, and you know, police interventions and drug interventions and all that. And so they put a lot of money with social workers and neighborhood workers. You know, they had a solution that they proposed and they proposed and they proposed. And so these people worked for many years and nothing ever happened. And then they turned to RRI. And they asked those people, what is your dream? What is your dream? And the people said, well, you know, we come from Turkey and we come from countries where we all have a little garden, and here we just have this, you know, tiny little apartment, very happy to have the apartment, but we dream of a garden. So what the city did was they found a lot, it was an old industrial empty brown, you know, field. And they put, you know, they put lots of 2 by 2 meters and put some good ground in it, you know, good soil, you know, planting soil. And they said, these are gardens that you can rent, but you cannot rent them with euros. You can only rent them with a point, or, you know, kind of local currency that you can earn if you help us, for example, to keep the street clean, or to help the children in school, or to, you know, plant little flowers in the street because it's a somber, you know, nasty street. And all of a sudden, you know, you saw everybody participate. And the interesting thing was with, you know, they planted vegetables in the garden. And then all of a sudden, you know, the people started working together. Oh, can I use your, oh, you have good onions. Can I have some of your onions? Or shall we exchange for my turnips, or whatever it was. So you saw the social dynamics was not about I'm Greek and you're Bulgarian, but we're both gardeners. You know, zooming out, we have a common goal. And gardening is what connects us, rather than cultural identity is what differs us. So if you find this common denominator or this common ambition, you know, we all want certain things together, you know, happiness for our families, things like that, then, you know, and then create the conditions for them to work together. And with those tokens, you know, the tokens that they earned by doing all the tasks, it could be taking care of your neighbor, it could be taking care of your neighborhood. You know, it could be different things. They had a whole list of things that they could do to earn money with. And with those tokens, they could also take the bus. Okay. So there was no, or you know, I think it was the bus and the tram, or, you know, transportation. So the thing was that there was no more competition, because this money, they could not use it for buying cigarettes. They could only use it for things that they needed, such as mobility. And the vegetables of the gardens went to the social restaurant. The social restaurant made good soups and good meals with it, so they could go to a restaurant. And the people that had only euros, like rich people like me, and I had no, you know, it was called torques, it was called the little towers, I could not go to that restaurant. So they all of a sudden became the elite, and I was marginalized, but it was beautiful. It restored the balance. So that is why you have to really, if money is one of the drivers that keeps you away from your target, you're going to have to put it in your mapping and say money is a means of exchange, you know. And now the current money is so competitive that we're too weak to win that battle. Let's create our own money. Let's create our own systems of exchange. Okay, and there's a lot of expertise on that. You know, I think even in the FOTRIS program, in the final conference, we did a workshop on money, how to create your own exchange systems. So okay, that was a you know, I'm just trying to help. It's about indeed zooming out, but a lot of these lock-ins are so institutionalized and so canonized that we don't even think we can change them. And money, you can change it. I have just published a chapter in a manual on social finance. I'd be happy to share it with you about, you know, it's happening all over the place. People are using time as an exchange unit. I work 1 hour for you, and we keep track of that. And in return, somebody else can work 1 hour for me. And whether you are a computer specialist or a gardener, 1 hour is 1 hour. Social equality. So you can, you know, establish your own exchange systems. We even use, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
In those groups that I investigating, those women exchange also do that. They exchange you can stay in someone's house and instead of an exchange of doing cooking or taking care of the dogs and many kinds of things.
So those can be leverages. If you feel like Louisa, if you feel that there is a blockage for people participating in education because of money, means you have to include money. You know, remember in the bottom of that.
Yeah, unfortunately,
you know,
we included it in the strategy to have the baby parking, to have this token that they could rather choose if they would prefer a cultural program. I mean, let's go all together to the Swan Lake, who maybe many have never been in a theater. I mean, but
Sorry,
the problem now is the...
Again, let's not defend the problem. Let's look for solutions. And I see.
No. The solution was considered as just...
Well, not good enough yet. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, Raniero.
No, as I said, we have not implemented any ARU, so we are really looking the problem from outside. But there is one issue which I would like to raise. Whenever you design a solution for a certain community, okay, which can be considered an innovation because you're bringing to them something which is not there. I have many examples where the solution didn't work because of the reaction of the beneficiary to the solution, which could not be foreseen because they didn't know. I mean, in many cases, they don't know, you are not in a position to know how you will react to a certain type of innovation until you face it and you have to use it. This can be in the positive sense and in a negative sense. In the example you made, Anne, about the small gardens, you said the people started cooperating with each other, which was probably not foreseen, okay? And if you had asked them before, they would have said, yeah, maybe it's a good idea, let's try it. But I have plenty of examples where the people reacted to the innovation in a certain way when they had to face it, to use it. And in some cases, this was a negative reaction, but it was virtually impossible. In some cases, it's easy to identify the problems. If you do a good context analysis, a good series of interviews with the beneficiaries, it can work. But some cases, now we don't have time, but I can illustrate a number of cases where it could not be foreseen until it had been implemented and the people were really facing the kind of things we were offering to them, and they realized it was not exactly what they wanted, or this not what expected, and so on and so forth. So how do you manage this problem in your process of RRI?
Well, this is the core of RRI. It's non-linear. You cannot predict and control. We, as researchers, we still have that, I don't know, subconscious fantasy that we can control the outcomes. And its complexity is that it's uncontrollable. And what is new for us as researchers is to embrace that and to say, we will learn if we open ourselves to unpredictability. We will learn from reality. That is what science is about. But we don't want to know that. We want to control reality rather than learn from reality. So that is where it is a deep paradigm shift. You know, we all think that we were created in the image of God. We're above nature and we can control nature and own nature and exploit nature. But we're part of it, and nature is evolving, and so is society, because nature evolves and we have climate change, we get migrants, and then society changes. So it is unpredictable, and responsibility means responsiveness. Again, what Louisa was saying, the core is the process. So you're going to be a responsible researcher if you're open to unexpected results, if you're happy with unexpected outcomes, because then is when you learn, okay? Then is you can say, wow, a totally unexpected outcome from the Toricus, the towers experiment, is that after it ran for several years, it's still running, it's now, it's institutionalized, and they came with the employment service and with employers to see, how to build a bridge with the more, this is work, work in the neighborhood and work for the neighbors and social, activity, but how does it relate to employed, work for productivity? And the conclusion was that they said, wow, the employers even said this increases their employability, even if the skills that they learn are not directly, useful in a factory or whatever, but especially they said the concept of work is now being broadened. Work is now being reduced to being productive for private profit. If you work for a company making jelly, you work. If you make jelly at home, you don't work. You know, it's the payment that define. We have narrowed it down to paid labor for the private profit of a company, which is stupid because so many people then cannot work. And there's so much work to do. So even the employer said, wow, we start understanding that work is much more and much broader. You know, so there was even a unlearning the extractive model and learning a more inclusive model among the employers. But it takes time and it takes experiments and it takes, you know, it takes learning from what emerges, and you cannot predict it with nobody. That was never the outcome, that we were going to teach the, you know, the employers that work is more than, you know, making money for them. But it happened. And so indeed, when you see that something is not happening that you're hoping, you need to zoom out again and say, like for example, if you say we want to improve the position of women, but an unexpected outcome is a resistance of the men, then the aim would be like, can we redefine the goal in such a way that the men also find it important? And it could be, you know, you men also want families, you know, healthy families and a quality education for their children, right? You know, men will also want their children to be well educated in a safe and good family. And then you can help them to, you know, understand like what in that, if that is the goal, then how can, you know, more autonomy for my wife contribute to my goal? And then they become the owner. They become the co-designer and the co-owner of what you think, you know. But the goal is not to set their women free, because then they feel threatened. But the goal is to create happy families. It's their goal as well. And then you sort of like, but it takes time, you know, and it's again and again finding ways to make them the owner, the co-owner of the goal, and not saying, well, we want you to find it important that your wife has more freedom, but to say like, how could more freedom of your wife also be beneficiary to you as a father or as a member of whatever, the migrant community or whatever? So that is where you are responsive as researcher. And I had to also learn to, you know, my coworkers would say like, we chose the wrong methodology because we did not get the responses that we expected. And I said, that means you have the right methodology, because you get an unexpected answer. You are learning, you are educated, you know. That is what research is about. It's about discovering something that you did not know before, okay? But it's a mind shift. And yes, the European projects force us to play the old role, even if it's RRI, you know, it's still, and tell us what your products will be. So that is where it is tricky. Don't be too naive to tell them, oh, we don't know what it will be, because, you know, in your midterm evaluation, it might not work well. I mean, we managed in the Fortress project to tell them like, whoa, you know, the companies and the politicians are very inspired by, and they're like, oh, okay, then we want to know how you did that, you know, sort of like authority argument, you know, if you can point out other people that are happy with your outcomes, then European Commission, you know, will maybe, be supportive. But it's tricky. It's a paradigm shift. It's different. Okay, I want some other reactions or concerns. Or I also want to say that, you know, I'm available to, if you have specific questions or things that after, you know, in the, let's call it the aftercare of these 2 workshops, you know, if you say you confused us, or there's something that we have not understood, or, you know, of course, I'll be willing to, you know, let's chat another hour together. And, you know, I don't need to, we're not going to send an invoice for that.
Yeah, I would have one. I don't, it's maybe not a question, just like thinking aloud, this zooming out. And this is not only about our case, but more generally, like when defining the problem, like how far can this zooming out go if you're comparing to the real possibilities and results in real life settings? As like, for example, I'm thinking that the case of developing reception services, what we are doing, and from some perspective, one could argue that it could be even like a legitimizing restrictive immigration policies of nation states when we are making the services like more nice, even though what people really want, they want to get, they don't want to stay in the centers, they want to get international protection. But then, of course, in the level of a individual life, in this current situation, for example, getting childcare to study or to do housework or to rest or something, of course, the people benefit from that, and that is something that we can do. But still, like what is the about this zooming? I was just like, because the examples we had about this antibiotics and everything, they were like zooming really far. But the resources we have in one project, like they are limiting the choices we can do in this.
Yeah, you don't have to zoom out that far, because it's not that well. I think you need to zoom out far enough to understand what you, if you're not making the progress that you're hoping to make, it is because there is something that is lacking in your systems map, right? You're overlooking something that is blocking your progress, and you don't know what it is. So you zoom out until you have those things included. And of course, if you could keep zooming out, and you will come, with the politics of China. Everything is connected to everything. But like I showed you in the mental map, you have to decide what you include and what you exclude. You cannot include everything. The map is never the territory, never. So the question is, did we include enough to achieve or to move in the direction of our goal? Or if we see that we're moving in a different direction, then there is what we call an attractor, something that is influencing us, that we like. It could be money, it could be the fear of men, that they will lose control over their women. Then you have to include it. And at a certain time, you will also say, well, in the limits, we have only a 3-year project, it will be a recommendation. Like, we know that there are other things that are at higher levels. We will note them down as an outcome of the research, that in a next project, these mechanisms should be tackled. You cannot integrate all the mechanisms. You're just contributing a piece of the puzzle, right? You're not solving the puzzle. But you have to have
the goal.
Go ahead.
So the goals are set first, and then inside of those goals, you are zooming in.
The goals are set first in a flexible way. Remember the goal of the there's a window of viability. If you say, I define the goal and now I want you to support that goal, it's more like, do we agree that in a general sense this is where we want to go? And if you say that we want women to be empowered from their husbands, you're not, you know already that the husbands will not feel it's in their interest, or will not support that. So if you say our goal is to have families that, where children can really thrive and get the best chances for the future, that is a goal in which women's emancipation is contributes to that. But it's formulated, you're zooming out a little bit in a way that includes the men. And then, in that co-creation, you might get where you want to get, but by focusing on something, not a specific outcome, but more a process, going in the direction of healthy families. And what healthy families look like might be very different in Africa than it is here, or than it is in Western family, or than it is in a migrant family. We're not defining that, but we're creating processes that they can, that we define happy, healthy families in a way that is congruent with their values, with everybody's values. And if you see they're suffering, and then, okay, we need to zoom out again. Like, why are they, create safe conditions where everybody can say, yeah, we agree with that goal. If we can, and you're never gonna say what exactly it's gonna look like, but you might get really unexpected outcomes, that they discover healthy food or whatever, or the father gets interested in school, or it could be totally unexpected. And that's why it's better. I usually call it the horizon that we want to go to. I mean, if you say we'll go to that point in the horizon, you don't know every step. You might come across a creek that you have to, or a rock, or you don't know exactly, and you also don't know what exactly you're going to see when you're on the horizon, because you're never on the horizon. The horizon moves forward, okay? But it's good to say that, that where that mountain is, let's go there and then see what we see beyond that. So it's defining a goal is is tricky because, you know, sustainable development goals is like health for everybody. What is health? How do we define health? Do we define it as access to a doctor, or do we define it as, you know, having a healthy lifestyle? And it could be different in different contexts. In certain countries, access to a doctor might be the first thing they need, you know. So it's you see what I mean? It's you sort of like, you have to agree with all the people, you know. You have your project, okay, you've delineated something in time and space and stakeholders. You want to achieve something, you want to go in a certain direction, but in a responsive way, okay, responsive to what occurs. And if you see that you're really not going there, then you zoom out just enough to move forward again. You know, what is blocking us right here and now, and that we will include. And then if you come across, you know, very complicated things, you know, you will have to say, okay, within that limits, this is what we can achieve now, and then write down that the limits need to be tackled by next research, or that you can publish an article about that to say like, okay, here are mechanisms that are underlighted in research or something like that. You use the means that you have in the 3 years that your project runs, and then you're responsive. You're not solving the world problem, not at all. You know, you're not creating a sustainable society, but you're putting in place all these little leverages that contribute to a process that goes in that direction. And it means unlearning, you know, unlocking many old, you know, traditional concepts of we control it, we define for them what is good. You know, that is not responsive. That is, you know, that's where it's a very fascinating and a very, I would like Ruben to tell the story of the Fotris as a you know, they also said, we are ICT engineers, we know nothing about refugees, and then look what a beautiful, you know, even the sociologists came to the engineer and said, how did you do that? So just to give you confidence, you know, trust the process, and if you understand the principle more or less, and you know, keep also talk to each other. Say like, I must be missing something because this is not going the way I want to. And then, you know, the team, you have now a collective intelligence. It's not something that we individually can, you know, responsive is you respond to something or somebody. It's not, you know, in my brain that I can be responsive. You understand? You need this ecosystem of co-researchers and co-partners, and then you can develop a collective intelligence, a responsive intelligence. You're responsible to somebody or responsible to something, but you can't control that, because then you're not responsive anymore. You're controlling, okay? So Ruben, would you like to share your story, or to, you know, maybe you have to unmute your microphone.
Yeah. I was trying to.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
okay. Well, I was listening to you, and there are like two different stories related to, I mean, to the research group where I come from. As you know, I mean, I'm from computer science, and my research group started in computer science. So for us, Fotris, I mean, the project where we met, and was one of the first projects where we were very involved, I mean, in topics that were not exactly about computer science, okay? That's true that for us, that all that stuff of RRI and co-RRI was something that was completely alien to us. It's something that we couldn't understand very well. But it is also true that the dynamics of the project forced us to work very tightly with people that were different, have a very different background, okay? In fact, the people from communication that you met from the RISE project, I mean, Tamara, Lisa, Noelia, and all of them came from a completely different field. But in the process of working in Fotris, we had to work together, okay? This took us to share a common understanding of how we work together, okay? That was the place when we started to see that the other have a totally different point of view about many issues, okay? In fact, about research, we have different perspectives. So we started to build a common language, okay? We have our difference, of course, but we started to be that common language. And when we started to be that common language and that common understanding, we could start to apply our shared understanding to different problems. In this case, it was refugees, and it was the seed of the RISE project. And we started, we started to see that those different points of view were somehow complementary, okay? And in fact, the definition of RISE was for us a quite long and complex process, okay? Because we need to rework once and again our different proposals in order to have a common, but also a common agreement about what we wanted to do, okay? And in fact, there were several important, very relevant outcomes for us, that the final proposal considers so many points of view that we were more or less, regarding the different perspectives that could be of interest, for the overall problem. Of course, as you know, because we are currently working on it, that took us to where we are continuously working in a process of redefining our ties in order to reach the final goal. For instance, in the case of UCM, when we agreed on the final beneficiaries, we discovered that even when we have involved beneficiaries in our research unit, okay, the actual beneficiaries of the strategy have quite somehow and slightly different points of view on what they want. So we need again to rework our strategy to incorporate their point of view, to discuss with them, okay, we have this final goal, okay, that is in this case your economical autonomy, okay, but you have a different point of view on how you can achieve it, how you want to achieve it. And this take us to rework again our solution. So this too, what it's saying, and it's not, it's not a straight path, to the final objective or to the final solution, but it's continuously reworking, okay? It's not a straight path, it's just going around, okay, trying to incorporate the different learning that we are finding, okay, and incorporate it then as assets for the final solution, okay? So yes, for us it was a totally breakthrough in the way that we work, particularly because we are working in problems that are so complex that it's not something that we have isolated in a lab or in a computer, and that where we control all the parameters. Okay, this is something that is out of the scope here. Okay, so we have to be, we have to be aware that we have to adapt. Okay, here we are dealing right now with the COVID-19. That was something totally unexpected when we were designing the project, and we were, for any project, and we need to adapt again. Okay, because the solutions that were expected before the pandemics is not the solution that we are expecting right now with the current pandemics, with all the constraints that are imposing on us. So sometimes it is true that it's very difficult. From the mental point of view, because we would like to have the solution, okay, and the way to reach them, and reworking it continuously is, sometimes a bit tiring, okay. But it's the only way to solve, this kind of really complex problems.
Okay, thank you, Ruben. Yeah, I really encourage you to think of this as a cafe where you meet once a week or once every 2 weeks and discuss this. Like I'm wondering why, and I'm frustrated because, and just turn around, and gradually you will start seeing that new insights and new attitudes are emerging, that you're sort of like understanding it's not about controlling the parameters and determining the outcome, but it's about the ongoing learning, iterative. It's iteration again and again and again. You're going to do 3 tests, and that's the whole idea, that it's constantly evolving. So encourage, and it's not that you in your brain you can sort of like control the 3 steps and then know where you're going to land. It's more that with the more angles you look at it, the richer your outcome will be, the richer your view of the complexity. So that's why I encourage you to use this team to build that collective intelligence. And I'm now handing back the the microphone to Raniero because I think we need to close the session, right? I saw the Zoom was open for 2 hours, so I'm using it.
Thank you very much for these two presentations, which were very much involving, engaging, and we can. And I'm pretty sure that we can bring this cooperation further in the next future. I would also like to thank all the participants. Next, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.